Recently, something's been really deeply taking place inside of me. I feel a fresh love sickness. Literally the sickness of love. The sickness of love is a single desire, unable to be satisfied or content or happy with anything outside of Him, anything apart from Him. It is a deep ache. It's the lover's ache. It's a blissful craving for Him. It is a deep dependency upon His presence in person and everything. And I've been feeling it so deeply in my heart and in my life in these recent days. And I want to encourage you that the first commandment is fulfilled by lovesickness. It is a command for lovesickness. It is an invitation into lovesickness, to be single-eyed, to be centered and fixed with one desire. You, Lord, you, only you. I once had a vision where I was above a building and I saw all these prayers coming up out of the building for God to do different things. And each prayer had a different color to it. Many of the colors were the same, for people were asking for the same things. But one prayer that went up was a different color than all the rest. And in this vision, I went in to see what this unique prayer was. And when I got close to this person in the vision, he was surrounded by noise and words. But his prayer was one word, and it was different than all the rest. It was, you, Lord. You. You. There are all kinds of things we can ask God for. There are all kinds of things that God gives. There are gifts that surround Him. But nothing can take the place of Him. And the culmination of all things, the crux of the matter, the heart of the issue is, Lord, I desire you above all your gifts and above anything else. And if you look at Song of Solomon chapter 2, she has this sweet, alone, intimate communion with the Lord. And she sits down and eats with Him, eats of Him. Then she says this phrase, sustain me. Then refresh me. Then I am lovesick. It is this sweet sickness of love, the soul that suffers out of desire for Him, this longing for Him above all other things, because we can cheat on God with things God gave us. This supreme desire and paramount desire being God Himself. This is what sustains the soul. The inverse is true. The soul loses its sustaining power when it fixes itself on something other than just Him. It is the add-ons, these other things that we want around Him and from Him, that really block the sustaining of the soul. But the soul will be sustained who stays set upon Him. The next thing she says is, refresh me. Herein is the essence of refreshing. That Christ be all, that His presence be the center and source, that His person be what is craved above all else. His presence as the literal experience of His person. He is inseparable from experience. We set ourselves against the experience of God when we desire the idea of God more than the person of God. When we love the idea of God more than the person of God. But He is inseparable from experience because He is alive and He speaks. And His voice is like honey, sweeter than honey to my taste, and His love better than wine. The next part of this says, let His left hand be under my head and His right hand embrace me. The only consolation that this love-sick one finds is being held by Him. To be held by Him. I pray that you would have the lover's ache, to constantly be held by him, to live longing for him above everything else. You know, there's a story of John the Apostle, old and frail, leaning on a staff, teaching young disciples about life, this life that Jesus is, this God life, divine substance of existence that God desires us to partake, which is him. And one of the students stands up and says, I believe the things that you're saying, but I do not believe in spiritual sensations. I don't believe in bliss. I don't believe in experience like you're saying. And John looks down, he smiles, and he carries this smile up and looks directly into the eyes of this young disciple. And he says, you will when you see him. And herein is the issue. The perceptibility of God is what life is. Life meaning this is eternal life, to know him. The life that we have received from him is literally the ability to be able to see him, to sense him, to enjoy him, to blissfully lay upon him, and to be lovesick for him. You see, when we really understand what life is, then we recognize there is no need to struggle. Why? Because my eyes see by life. You take life out of my eyes, and though the eye be there, it will not be able to see. My ears hear by life in the ear. If you take life away from me, my ears, though there, will never be able to hear. And so it is with God. He has quickened you and me with life. And the effortless yielding of fruit comes from simply yielding to his life. We need life in order for fruit to ever be. Dead things cannot produce, but life causes effortless production. Fruit comes out effortlessly. So how do we obtain life? By fellowship, by sweet love sickness, even as she alone is in the shade. She's near him. She is protected from the heat of this life by being alone in his presence. She says, I took great delight, sweet enjoyment of him alone in his presence. And I sat down, rest. She's restfully delighting alone in the presence of the Lord. And she eats fruit of him. She's able to partake of the fruit that he himself gives, and it then becomes fruit in her life. You know, for a long time, I didn't know what a grapefruit was. I just figured by the name it was some fruit of a grape. But one day somebody identified a grapefruit. They pointed to it and said, that's a grapefruit. Now, I wasn't in the place of not knowing what it was anymore. I could point one out, I could identify it. But I still had not eaten it. But after I had split one open and received its contents into me, I learned more by experiencing and tasting the grapefruit than I ever did by the name itself. And not only did I taste it, but in receiving it into me, I was able to live by the energy it provided for me. See, this is Christianity. God is not a businessman running a company, giving people orders to fulfill a purpose. He doesn't say, I'm the businessman. He says, I'm the bread. That he might be life on the inside to bring forth nourishment that brings nutrients so that we might walk out his nature. And in the same way, many Christians don't have any idea who Jesus is, really. And some of them move from not knowing who Jesus is to being able to at least identify him. But identifying Jesus is different than eating him. And it isn't until a Christian eats and tastes of the Lord that he will actually be able to receive the Lord into him. See, all the identification of grapefruit in the world will never put the substance inside of you. You can identify Jesus in all kinds of ways. You can pry into all kinds of theological issues. It may make a theologian, but it will never make a saint. We must eat him, receive him by experience so that we might live by him. Even to this day, I don't understand really what a grapefruit is, but I can enjoy it. And this seems to be the issue with Christianity. We would much rather explain than simply adore. He's very difficult, God is very difficult to understand, but he is easily enjoyed. So let me encourage you to love sickness, to rest upon him, to enjoy him, to whisper and receive his whisper. I pray for you that the Lord would bring love sickness upon you. The sickness of love, I pray, arrest you, touch you. In Jesus' mighty name. God bless you.